Hello, my name is Jacqueline Ruseni, and I am doing my video presentation on my internship with the Samaritan Suicide Hotline of Westport, Massachusetts. I wanted to take this time to talk with you about why I enjoy working with the Samaritans and why I'm so passionate about this. This is my third time completing an internship for the Samaritans of Westport. So I've already done two other videos, so I'm trying to make this one a little bit different than the other two. I really enjoy working with the Samaritans because you really get to see that you're helping each other that you work with, but you're also helping those within our community. The Samaritans deal with a wide variety of mental health disorders and illnesses. We also deal with, people who have just experienced a trauma, or they have a loved one that has experienced a trauma and they just need to talk to someone. The Samaritans are a great resource for anyone that is in need of someone to talk to. In the Samaritans, we refer to what we do as befriending. So whenever I'm talking with another volunteer, or I am talking with someone on the crisis line, I am always mindful that I am befriending them. Befriending, that is where we, the Samaritan, are talking 10%, and the individual on the other end of the phone or conversation is talking 90%. And that can be something that is difficult to understand. It's difficult to put into practice, because if we think about conversations that we have, most of the time we have a conversation that's just about 50-50. Maybe we have a conversation that's 60-40. But for the most part, both people in the conversation are very actively involved. At the Samaritans, we are there to listen. A befriender is someone who is there to, act as a friend, act as a supportive person for you, but not offer you advice, not really say anything other than be there as your sounding board. And that's what I try to think of and remind people of, is that we are there to create that awkward pause, that awkward silence, because usually during that time, it makes the caller want to fill in that awkward space with some type of dialogue, whether that dialogue is something that helps them work through what they're going through, whether that dialogue makes them feel awkward, where they say, maybe I don't need to be on this call. Sometimes that's helpful when we have callers who are calling for reasons that are not appropriate for our center, such as someone who wants to engage in a sexual conversation. That is an aspect of the Samaritans, and I won't touch upon that because I've touched upon that in my other videos, but it's certainly something that we deal with. So that awkward pause sometimes makes the caller realize, this individual is not going to participate in my conversation, and so I'm just going to get off the phone. And that's helpful for the Samaritan because it allows us to not have to get into a situation where we say, this is not what we're here for. I'm not going to continue this conversation, or that's not a topic that we typically discuss. I'd like to talk about how you're feeling. So it allows us to use that awkward pause, that awkward silence. And you can think about that in your day-to-day life. If you are having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden they're doing, and they're looking around, then usually you would say something. You would, try to relieve them of that awkward tension. So that's something that during our training we work on a lot. We do a lot of role playing with that. But getting back to what I was saying about why I like befriending and helpful is, the Samaritans offer a resource that most people don't have in their lives, especially if they are not in therapy. Because if you think about therapy, therapy and calling a crisis line are probably the only two places where you can speak your mind, talk about whatever's bothering you, and there's nothing that the other person is going to gain or needs to receive from you. They're simply there to listen to you, to hear what you have to say. A counselor might offer you advice, they might guide you, but a Samaritan or a befriender simply listens to what you have to say, and they offer little to no response. Some of my go-to responses on the hotline would be, okay, I understand. I see how you would feel that way, or just not saying anything. So there's a lot of ways where you can keep up that 10% and not go over, but also not sitting there saying nothing at all, because that makes callers, sometimes anxious when they don't hear anything from you. So even a simple those small, not words but noises, can be very helpful and very comforting, because it still encourages the listener to talk, the caller to talk, but you are not being silent to where they feel that they're talking to no one. So that's helpful. So back to my original point of why I like working with the Samaritans. I have found that the Samaritans has offered me an opportunity to really see how we help people, how we make an impact. In our field, sometimes we come across individuals who need our help, who receive services, but we don't know how they end up. We don't know, did they make it out of that terrible crisis? Did they come around, with this situation? Did they find relief from their mental illness or disorder? Did they find an appropriate treatment or method or therapy or something? Did something I, do or say help them in any way? So with the Samaritans and being a supervisor at the Samaritans, I have found that I've been able to see this turnaround. I've been able to see the results of our work through crisis situations where I know that our help, our assistance that we have provided someone during a crisis, whether that be an ambulance or numbers for homeless shelters, or a hotline to talk with someone about a sexual violence or assault situation that they've experienced, or helping them find a support group. We can see that. We know that, okay, rescue went and got them and they are alive, and they haven't been successful at trying to complete suicide. We know that, hey, I've given this person all of the resources imaginable that they can use to help them through this difficult time. And that's very rewarding. We also have callers that have called us, for many years, so we get to see them. Some callers are at their very lowest points and they're in the midst of crisis, and then, years down the road, they're better and they call just to check in and to say, this is how I'm doing, this is how I'm feeling, I just wanted to check in. And that's always great and that's always rewarding. We recently had a story of a young woman who called for many years, and I had never spoken with her, but some of my coworkers have. And I was able to learn that, she's had this very traumatic and difficult history with sexual violence. She's had a very difficult history with physical illness. And she has called over the years just to tell us how, kind of to vent to us and to tell us, this is how I'm feeling, this is how I'm coping, this is what's happening with me. And I think having stories like that and hearing people's stories and journeys along the way is not only helpful for us to have history on the individual. If they call again and we're there to pick up the phone, we know how to support them or what they need or what they're going to talk about. But it allows me as a psychology student to say, okay, so I try to treat it as a case study, say. So we have this woman and she has had such and such trauma and she has physical pain, and so what type of things could she do to help herself? How could she cope with such this traumatic experience? Could she engage in mindful practice and, maybe do yoga, maybe meditate, maybe, going to a support group and being active with Rain would help her through her sexual trauma. Maybe, being an advocate would help her, empower her throughout this situation. And what kinds of dietary changes could she make? These are all things that, granted, I'm not having this conversation with her and offering her solutions because that's not what I'm there for. I'm not a clinician. But I, as a student, am saying, if this were my client, if this were someone that came into my office and I had to, really think of how could I encourage this person or help this person to, move past this very traumatic, very difficult stage of their life. So I think that my internship experience with the Samaritans has really helped me to create my own, cases that I want to study and find solutions to problems that, maybe I didn't think of while I've been a student. So that's been helpful. Most importantly, the clinical experience that you get is unlike most opportunities, I think, that you get to experience as an undergrad, because you really get to work one-on-one with people. I'm not doing that so much this semester because I'm mostly supervising the people who are taking the one-on-one calls. So I work with them if they're having a crisis, if they are having some type of emergency, if they have a difficult phone call or they have questions about anything. I help walk them through any kind of situation where they feel they need assistance of any kind. And I've been doing just about 40 hours a week with them. It's something that I can do over the phone, which is really helpful because it allows me to kind of do it anywhere and everywhere. I last week made a last minute trip to Florida, and I was actually still able to work with my internship because I just needed my phone and my computer in order to be able to tap in and get to work and do what I need to do. So it's definitely helpful, and it's still something that I'm going to continue to do during the summer and while I'm a grad student. I really enjoyed the connections and the relationships that I've made with the Samaritans, and I find the work to be really rewarding. I just about a year ago lost my grandfather to suicide. It was something that was extremely unexpected and very difficult for me to deal with, and I found that by helping others, it has allowed me to make peace with what happened, and understand that, suicide affects a lot of people. It's certainly not something that I prepared myself to deal with in my family. It's not something that I think anyone is prepared to deal with. Even with all of my work with the Samaritans, I think I was more equipped to emotionally process suicide because it's very hard for family members to even comprehend why someone would want to harm themselves or end their life. But I think that, I had a greater understanding, and I felt more prepared to handle my grandfather's suicide. And I think that I'm doing the best that I can to honor him and to help others. And it really brings me a lot of peace and a lot of happiness to know that someone else who is struggling just as much as he was, I've been able to help them in some way, whether I was able to, help them in that moment and, hopefully change their mind, or I was able to, help them through any kind of emotional crisis or difficult time. So I find that that's been really rewarding for me, is just knowing that, I'm helping people, and you can see that. So that's really wonderful. I highly, highly recommend that anyone who's interested in working with the Samaritans to do so. We are always looking for volunteers, especially in the Westport Fall River branch. And it's not too far from campus, so even if you live on campus or you commute, you can still certainly make the trip over there. The training is wonderful for psychology students. I think that you'll find a what you're learning in the classroom to be directly related to what you'd be learning in the training, and they really prepare you for your role as a Samaritan. So I think that if anyone is looking for a new internship for the fall, or maybe you're watching this video and you're thinking of someone that would be great for this, I highly recommend that you reach out to us and, send us an email or give us a call. And, we'd really love to have anyone that would want to volunteer. Psychology students are wonderful for this position. I hope you've enjoyed my video. I hope that I was able to do something a little bit different to give you some more information that's not the same as the last two videos I did. And I hope you all have a great rest of your semester. Thank you.